My sister said it from the doorway of our childhood home with a glass of white wine in her hand, as if she were telling me the weather had changed. It was 6:40 inches the evening, less than 24 hours after we buried our father. The porch light flickered above me. 3 cardboard boxes sat at my feet, half soaked from the drizzle. My winter coat, my work shoes, 2 framed photographs, and the old blue sweater my mother used to wear when she baked on Sundays were all shoved inside like rubbish. Behind my sister, I could see the hallway I had walked through since I was 6 years old. The family photographs were gone. The brass umbrella stand was gone. The smell of my father's pipe tobacco and my mother's lavender polish was gone too, replaced by lemon cleaner and expensive perfume. Caroline leaned one shoulder against the doorframe. She was 40, polished, blonde, and calm in the cruelest possible way. Her husband, Miles, stood behind her in the foyer, already dressed like the man of the house. "Dad wanted order," Caroline said. "I'm just making sure things are handled properly." I looked past her at the stairs. "My things are inside." "They were inside," she said. "Now they're not." A car slowed on the street. "Mrs. Pritchard from next door looked toward us through her windshield, then quickly looked away. Caroline smiled. That smile told me everything. She wanted witnesses. She wanted humiliation. She wanted me to beg. I did not. I picked up the box with my mother's sweater in it and held it against my chest. "Did you change all the locks? And the alarm code?" Miles said, stepping forward. I looked at him for the first time. He had never liked me. Not because I had done anything to him, but because I had never been impressed by him. Men like Miles needed applause the way other people needed air. Caroline took a slow sip of wine. "You should find somewhere to stay tonight. This is my home too." Her face hardened. "No, Amelia. It was Mom and Dad's home. And now it's part of the estate. I'm the responsible one, remember? The responsible one." I almost laughed. For 14 months, I had been the one sleeping in the downstairs sitting room because Dad couldn't manage the stairs after his surgery. I had been the one arranging Mom's care before she passed. I had been the one paying the night nurse when Dad forgot to transfer the money. I had been the one who sat beside him through the last round of chemo, holding a plastic bowl under his chin, while Caroline posted pictures online about family strength. But at the funeral, Caroline stood in front of everyone in a black designer dress and spoke about duty. She said she had carried the family through the darkest season. People cried. I sat in the second pew with my hands folded in my lap and said nothing. That was my mistake. Silence gives liars room to decorate. "My solicitor will be in touch," Caroline said. Then she closed the door. The new lock clicked. I stood there in the rain with 3 boxes and a house full of ghosts behind a door I could no longer open. My name is Amelia Whitmore. I was 33 years old when my sister tried to erase me from my own family. What she did not know was that my parents had seen her clearly long before I did. And what she really did not know was that the house was never hers to take. My parents were not wealthy in the way people imagined. They were careful. My father, Thomas Whitmore, spent 37 years running a small architectural restoration company in Connecticut. He repaired old churches, town halls, Victorian porches, anything with history in the bones. My mother, Mary Ann, taught literature at a private girls' school until her hands started shaking too badly to hold a pen. They lived modestly, but they never lived carelessly. Dad saved receipts in labeled folders. Mum wrote every birthday and anniversary on a paper calendar even after everyone else switched to phones. They believed in preparation. Caroline believed in appearances. She married Miles Harrington when I was 22. He came from a family with old money stories and no actual money left. He wore monogrammed shirts, drove leased cars, and talked about private investment opportunities that never seemed to become anything real. For years, my parents helped them quietly. A loan for the wedding. A loan for the townhouse. A loan when Miles's import business failed. A loan when Caroline said the twins needed private school because public education would ruin their confidence. I knew about some of it. I did not know about all of it. Dad was good at hiding disappointment. Mum was good at calling it compassion. I left home at 23 and built my own life. Not loudly. Not dramatically. I bought a neglected duplex in New Haven with every dollar I had saved. Then another. Then a small brick building with 3 flats above a florist. By 32, I owned 8 rental units, had a modest design consultancy, and a bank account Caroline would have called impossible if she had seen it. She never saw it. I never told her. There is a strange freedom in being underestimated by people who are too arrogant to ask questions. When Mum's condition got worse, I moved back home temporarily. Temporarily became 14 months. Caroline visited when there was an audience. Christmas Eve. Easter lunch. Mum's birthday. She brought flowers, took photographs, kissed Dad on the cheek, and left before anyone needed help cleaning up. When Mum died in November, Dad folded into himself. He still woke up at 6 every morning, made tea for 2, then stood at the kitchen counter staring at the second cup until it went cold. I stayed. I cooked. I drove him to appointments. I learned the difference between pills that had to be taken with food and pills that absolutely could not be. Caroline called twice a week, usually from her car. How is he? Tired. Well, we're all tired, Amelia. Then she would sigh, as if grief were a competition she intended to win. Dad died the following spring. Quietly. In his chair by the window, with one hand resting on the armrest Mum had mended twice because he refused to replace it. The last thing he said to me was, "Finch has the blue folder." I thought he meant insurance papers. I said, "Don't worry about that now." He looked at me, and for a second, the fog lifted from his eyes. "Not for me," he whispered. "For you." Then he closed his eyes. And by morning, he was gone. The week after Dad's funeral, the family turned cold in a way that felt organized. My Aunt Lydia stopped answering my calls. My cousin Rebecca replied to my messages with one-word answers. My Uncle Graham, Dad's younger brother, left a voicemail saying, "Don't make things harder than they need to be." I didn't understand until Rebecca finally forwarded me the email. Caroline had sent it to half the family. Subject line, estate concerns. I am heartbroken to share this, but Amelia has become increasingly difficult since Dad's passing. She lived in the house rent-free for months and is now making claims about property and money that do not belong to her. Miles and I are trying to protect Mum and Dad's legacy from being exploited during this vulnerable time. Please give us space as we handle the estate responsibly. I read it 3 times. Rent-free. Claims. Exploited. My hands did not shake. That surprised me. I sat in my rented motel room off the interstate, the kind with beige curtains and a humming mini fridge, and stared at the email until the words blurred. Then I opened my banking app. I looked at the rental income from the month before. I looked at the portfolio account I had built quietly for 11 years. I looked at the available balance in my business account. Caroline could keep her narrative for a few more days. I did not need the house to survive. But I needed the truth to breathe. The first heirloom appeared online on a Thursday. Mum's walnut writing desk. The one Dad had restored for her when I was 9. Caroline listed it as, "Antique desk, minor wear, must collect, $200. I messaged the seller from a secondary account and asked if it was still available. Miles replied within 7 minutes. Cash only. Pick up Saturday. By Friday, more items appeared. Dad's drafting table. The silver tea set from Mum's grandmother. The green velvet armchair from the reading room. A box of first edition books Mum had protected like children. Caroline was not preserving the estate. She was stripping it. That night Uncle Graham called me. He was not a warm man. He had Dad's jaw and Dad's stubbornness, but none of Mum's softness. "Did you know your sister is selling Thomas's drafting table?" he asked. "Yes," he breathed out slowly. "She told Lydia it was to cover funeral expenses. The funeral was prepaid." "I know." Silence stretched between us. Then he said, "Miles owes people money." I sat down on the motel bed. "How much?" "Enough that he's been trying to borrow against anything that looks like collateral. His company is being sued by 2 vendors. Maybe 3. I closed my eyes. There it was. The shape of it. Caroline had not locked me out because she was grieving. She had locked me out because she needed control fast. And I was the only person likely to ask for paperwork. The letter from Finch Lowe arrived 2 days later. Cream envelope. Heavy paper. My name typed in black ink. Inside was a formal notice. The reading of Thomas and Marianne Whitmore's last will and testament would take place the following Monday at 10 a.m. At the bottom, in blue fountain pen, someone had written, "Miss Whitmore, please arrive 20 minutes early. There is a sealed instruction concerning you alone." A. Finch, Arthur Finch, had been my parents' solicitor for as long as I could remember. I remembered him as a tall man with silver eyebrows who sent Christmas cards with no photographs and perfect handwriting. I called the office immediately. His assistant answered, "Mr. Finch is expecting you Monday, Miss Whitmore. Can he tell me what this is about? I'm afraid not. Does my sister know? There was a pause. No. That answer stayed with me all weekend. Caroline hosted a family supper on Sunday night. She did not invite me. Rebecca did. She wants everyone to hear her side before tomorrow, Rebecca said quietly. You should come, so I did. Aunt Lydia's dining room was crowded, overheated, and full of people pretending not to stare at me. Caroline sat at the center of the table like a queen at trial. Miles poured wine. Aunt Lydia twisted her napkin. Uncle Graham stood near the fireplace and did not sit down. Caroline began before the soup. I want everyone to know that tomorrow is only a formality, she said. Dad trusted me to handle things properly. Did he? I asked. The room went still. Caroline's eyes flashed. Yes, Amelia. He did. Miles smiled thinly. You've had a difficult year, he said. No one is blaming you for being emotional. I looked at him. I'm not emotional. That made him blink. Caroline leaned forward. You lived off Mom and Dad for over a year. Now you want to act like a victim because I'm protecting what's left? I set down my spoon. I was there because they needed care. You were there because your little design business wasn't going anywhere. Rebecca looked down at her plate. Aunt Lydia whispered, Girls, please. But Uncle Graham spoke over her. Caroline, when was the last time you took Thomas to an appointment? Caroline froze. That's not the point. When? Miles cleared his throat. We're not doing an interrogation. Uncle Graham did not look at him. When? Caroline's face tightened. I helped in other ways. That was the first crack. Small, but real. I stood. I'll be at the solicitor's office tomorrow. Caroline laughed once. Come if you want. But don't embarrass yourself when there's nothing for you. I picked up my coat. For someone who's so certain, you seem very nervous. Nobody followed me to the door. But as I stepped outside, Rebecca came after me. She pressed something into my hand. A folded receipt. It's from Saturday, she whispered. Miles sold your mum's books to a dealer. I thought you should have proof. I looked at her. Her eyes were wet. I'm sorry, she said. I believed her at first. I folded the receipt and put it in my pocket. Most people do. The next morning, I arrived at Finch Lowe at 9:37. The office occupied the second floor of a narrow brick building above a bakery. The hall smelled of coffee, old wood, and raincoats. Arthur Finch met me himself. He was older than I remembered, but still impossibly neat. Charcoal suit, polished shoes, white hair combed back with military precision. Miss Whitmore, he said. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. He led me into his private office and closed the door. On his desk sat a blue folder. Dad's blue folder. My throat tightened. Finch placed one hand on it. Your parents revised their estate plan 5 years ago, he said. They asked me to keep certain documents confidential until both had passed. Why? His expression softened by half an inch. Because they loved both daughters. But they trusted only one of them to protect what mattered. I did not know what to say. He opened his drawer and removed a sealed envelope with my name handwritten across the front. My mother's handwriting. Do not open this until I instruct you to, Finch said. There will be a moment. A moment? You'll know it. At 10, the conference room filled. Caroline arrived in a cream coat and pearl earrings, Miles beside her with a leather portfolio he probably wanted everyone to notice. Aunt Lydia came in looking pale. Rebecca sat near me. Uncle Graham took the chair at the far end of the table, arms crossed. Caroline smiled when she saw me. Brave of you. I said nothing. Finch entered carrying 2 folders. One black, one blue. He began with the will. Formal language. Dates. Witnesses. Sound minds. Legal declarations. Then the personal gifts. To Caroline Elizabeth Harrington, my mother's pearl necklace, and the silver-framed photograph of Marianne on our wedding day. Caroline's mouth relaxed. To Amelia Rose Whitmore, Marianne's gold locket and Thomas's leather-bound sketchbook. I looked down at my hands. To Lydia Clark, the dining service inherited from Margaret Whitmore. Aunt Lydia began to cry quietly. To Graham Whitmore, Thomas's hand tools, and the oak rocking chair from the study. Uncle Graham swallowed hard. That was it. No house. No savings. No company shares. No mention of the land behind the bakery. Caroline smiled. She actually smiled. Miles closed his portfolio as if the meeting were finished. Well, Caroline said, I think that settles it. Finch placed the black folder aside. No, he said. It does not. Caroline's smile faded. Finch rested his hand on the blue folder. The will concerns only assets held in your parents' personal names at the time of death. 5 years ago, Thomas and Mary Ann Whitmore established the Whitmore Preservation Trust. Miles sat forward. What trust? Finch opened the folder. The family home, the old bakery building on Mercer Street, the adjoining parcel, and several financial accounts were transferred into the trust at that time. Caroline stared at him. That's impossible. I'm the executor. You are the executor of the will, Finch said. You have no authority over trust assets. Miles's face changed before Caroline's did. He understood money faster than she understood consequences. Who controls the trust? He asked. Finch looked at me. Every person in the room followed his gaze. My pulse sounded loud in my ears. Finch said, Amelia Rose Whitmore is the sole beneficiary. The room broke open. Caroline stood so quickly her chair struck the wall. No. Finch remained seated. Yes. No, Dad would never do that. He did. Mum wouldn't. She did. Caroline pointed at me. She manipulated them. Finch's voice sharpened. The trust was created 5 years ago, Mrs. Harrington. Both grantors were medically evaluated within 60 days of execution. Independent witnesses signed every document. Your parents also requested a second solicitor review the structure for undue influence. There was none. Aunt Lydia covered her mouth. Rebecca began to cry silently. Uncle Graham looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, his face held no doubt. Finch turned a page. There is also a protective clause. Any person who attempts to remove, sell, mortgage, or otherwise dispose of trust property without trustee approval may be held personally liable for damages. Miles went white. Caroline turned toward him. What did you do? He did not answer. Finch looked at Caroline. I will need a full inventory of all items removed from the house since Mr. Whitmore's death. Caroline gripped the back of her chair. They were just things. My mother's books were not just things, I said. My voice was quiet. That made it worse for her. Caroline looked at me as if I had slapped her. You always do this, she hissed. You stand there acting noble while everyone feels sorry for you. No, I said. I stand there because shouting doesn't make the truth stronger. Finch lifted the sealed envelope. Your parents also left a letter to be read at this point. Caroline shook her head. I don't want to hear it. That is your choice, Finch said. But the letter will be read. He unfolded the paper. My mother's handwriting covered 2 pages in blue ink. Finch began. To our daughters. If you are hearing this, then we are gone, and the decisions we made are finally being revealed. We know there may be anger. We know there may be hurt. But we made these choices after years of watching, hoping, forgiving, and finally accepting what was true. Caroline sat down slowly. Finch continued. Caroline, we love you. Nothing in this document changes that. But love is not the same as trust. We helped you more times than anyone knows. We gave money when we should have asked questions. We protected you from consequences until the consequences began reaching for everyone else. Miles stared at the table. You and Miles have built a life that depends too heavily on other people rescuing you. We cannot allow our home, our savings, or Amelia's peace to become the next rescue. Aunt Lydia sobbed once. Finch's voice softened. Amelia came when we needed her. Not because she wanted property. Not because she wanted praise. She came because she understood that love is often quiet, repetitive, and exhausting. It looks like soup at midnight. Pharmacy runs. Fresh sheets. Sitting beside someone who no longer remembers what day it is. I pressed my fingers into my palm. We are sorry, Amelia, for every time we asked you to understand your sister instead of asking her to respect you. We confused your strength with endless capacity. That was unfair. My eyes burned. Finch read the final paragraph. The trust is not a prize. It is protection. It is our last boundary, built for the daughter who never demanded one. Use it to build something honest. Use it to live freely. And please remember this. Forgiveness may be holy, but access is earned. The room was silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that changes the shape of a family. Caroline's face crumpled. Not with grief. With exposure. Miles stood first. This is absurd. We'll challenge it. Finch closed the letter. You may seek counsel. They will tell you what I am telling you. The trust is valid. Caroline turned to me. You're really going to take everything? I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, no. You already tried to do that, she flinched. I opened the envelope Finch had given me. Inside was a copy of the trust, the house deed, the bakery deed, account summaries, and a photograph I had never seen before. Mum and Dad standing in front of the house, 5 years younger, holding a small sign that read, "For Amelia, when she finally needs us to say it out loud." That was when I cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just one clean break in the wall I had built around myself. Caroline left before the meeting ended. Miles followed her. He did not hold the door. 30 days later, I walked through the front door of my childhood home with a key that worked. The house had been emptied in strange ways. The dining room table was gone. The curtains were gone. Most of the lamps were gone. Someone had taken the copper pans from the kitchen wall and the rug from the study. But on the windowsill above the sink, behind a dead rosemary plant, sat Mum's chipped blue teacup. The ugly one. The one with the crooked handle. The one she used every morning because Dad had bought it from a child's pottery stall at a school fair and insisted it had character. Caroline had taken the silver. She had missed the treasure. I picked up the cup and sat on the kitchen floor. The house was cold. The rooms echoed. It no longer smelled like my parents. That hurt more than any lock ever could. I cried then. For Dad. For Mum. For the sister I had wanted. For the family that chose the easiest lie because the truth required them to apologize. The legal aftermath was not clean, but it was clear. Finch sent formal notices. Caroline and Miles were required to return or compensate the trust for everything they had sold. Miles's creditors came forward. The import business collapsed within 2 months. Their townhouse went on the market by winter. Aunt Lydia called me 3 weeks after the reading. She cried so hard I could barely understand her. I should have known, she said. Your mother told me once that you were carrying more than anyone saw. I should have listened. You're listening now, I said. It was not absolution. But it was a beginning. Rebecca came by with a box of Mum's books she had bought back from the dealer herself. Uncle Graham helped me rebuild the back fence. We worked all Saturday without saying much. At sunset, he handed me a bottle of water and said, "Your Dissot would be proud." That nearly broke me again. Caroline called once. I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted, "I know you think I'm the villain. But you don't know what pressure feels like when everyone expects you to have a perfect life." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "I do know pressure. I just didn't turn mine into permission to hurt people." She did not reply. 6 months later, I reopened the old bakery building on Mercer Street. Not as a bakery. As 4 small studio spaces for women starting over. A florist who had left a bad marriage. A bookbinder who needed room for her equipment. A single mother building an accounting practice. A young baker who cried when I told her the first 3 months of rent would be reduced. I named the building Mary Ann House. The sign was simple. Cream letters on dark green wood. Mum would have loved it. On opening day, Aunt Lydia brought flowers. Rebecca brought champagne. Uncle Graham stood near the door, pretending not to be emotional. I placed Mum's chipped blue teacup on a shelf in the small shared kitchen. Not because it matched. Because it belonged. People ask me whether I forgave Caroline. The honest answer is complicated. I forgave the version of her I kept waiting for. I forgave the little girl who once held my hand crossing the street, who taught me how to braid hair, who whispered jokes under the table at Christmas until Mum told us to behave. But the woman who locked me out of my home after our father's funeral? The woman who sold our mother's books and told the family I was greedy? The woman who mistook my silence for weakness? I do not give her access to my life. Forgiveness is not a key. It is not an invitation. Sometimes forgiveness is simply putting down the hope that someone will become who you needed them to be. One Sunday evening in late October, I sat on the front porch in Dad's old chair. The frame still creaked on the left side. The maple tree in the yard had turned gold. Inside, Mum's blue teacup sat beside the photograph from the envelope, the one of my parents holding the sign. The house was still half empty. I liked it that way. Empty rooms can be grief. They can also be possibility. I had spent years believing that being the dependable daughter meant needing less, asking less, accepting less. My parents saw that. Too late in some ways. Just in time in others. They could not stop Caroline from becoming who she became. But they could stop her from taking everything with her. That was their final gift. Not the house. Not the money. Not the trust. The gift was proof. Proof that they knew. Proof that quiet love counts. Proof that the person who does the work in silence is not invisible forever. My sister thought changing the locks would make me homeless. She did not know my parents had already built me a door she could not close. And she did not know I had spent my entire adult life building a foundation of my own. So if someone in your family has ever rewritten your story to make themselves look innocent, remember this: you do not have to shout over them forever. Sometimes the truth waits quietly. In a blue folder. In a sealed envelope. In a house you thought you had lost. And when the right door opens, you walk through it with your head high. Not because you won. Because you finally stopped begging people to see your worth. You saw it yourself. That was enough.